a young perspective on hot-button issues around the world. This is The Hub.
Hello and welcome to our special roundtable on China's development opportunities for the world. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing. The world today faces uncertainty, slowing growth, geopolitical tensions, and complex challenges. Amid all these turbulence, China is charting a clear path forward. With the launch of the 15th five-year plan, China is focusing on high-quality growth, expanding domestic demand, and new quality productive forces. For the global economy, it signals potential for trade, investment, and cooperation, while offering a measure of stability in these uncertain times. So, what does China's economic roadmap mean for the global economy? And how can international partners engage in this next phase of growth? Joining us for this discussion are distinguished panelists. They are Professor Zha Daojiong. He is with School of International Studies of the Institute of South-South Cooperation and Development at Peking University. Welcome, Professor Zha, as always. John Milligan-Whyte is chairman of the America-China Partnership Foundation. Welcome, John. Good to see you again. Zhou Mi is senior research fellow at the Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation. Welcome, sir. And last, but certainly not least, we have Zhou Xing, head of public affairs at PwC China. Dr. Zhou, let me start with you. Let's talk about China's economic growth target that is set at 4.5 to 5% for the year 2026. While some Western media focus on the fact that this is the slowest GDP target set by China in the past decades, others pointed out that if you look at around the world, this is actually relatively fast, right? The global average is barely 3%. The average for developed economies is barely 2%. So what is your reading into China's new GDP growth target?
It is true that if you compare it with the data with the previous years, maybe it's a little bit slower. But I think it's remarkable, especially on such a kind of uncertain world. So we know that the economy, many of the economy from the practices to the theory, they told us that it's important to keep a speed of growth, because it's just like when you are riding a bicycle, you have to keep it in a relatively a certain speed, and that it will keep you stable. So China is a super large economy. We have so many possibilities. I think it's much more impossible for all this part of China to grow at the same speed. We rarely have the differences, but we can keep an average speed of growth for 4.5 to 5%. So that is important to share our opportunities with our partners, no matter in the way of trade or investment. They can benefit from that. And second, I would say that it's important to know that that speed is not just like before. We developed, but we are not in the traditional way of skills expanding. Maybe in the past, we can just put more capital, more people, more land to create our better growth. But now we are trying to change our path to a different way. We are going to have a high-quality development. That means that we are trying to encourage the innovation, the technology, the kind of intellectual property. I think that is really important, because even with a speed of 5 or 4.5%, it's really giving so many efforts, so many new energy to the world growth. It will connect the world and with a lot of more opportunities in the different ways.
So basically you're saying that how the Chinese economy grows in the future is so much more important than how much it grows.
Yeah. It's quite different, because the world is trying to change the panel, change its way of development. So China is creating much more different ways for better, share of the opportunities.
Yeah, one recurring theme of China's economic planning is this new quality productive forces, or new productive forces, as some media put it. It is sitting at the core of the 15th five-year plan. So let me ask you, Ms. Zhou Xing, about this new quality productive forces that is focusing on indigenous innovation, on research and development, on green growth. How do you think this emphasis on new quality productive forces will reshuffle global supply chain? And what opportunities do you think this new concept will present to China's global partners?
We see the 15th five-year plan actually set a very clear path in the next 5 years, and gave our entrepreneurs a very confidence in the future. And this also echoed to PwC 29th Global CEO Survey. We see 65% of China's CEOs tell us they are very confident of their growth of their revenue in the next 3 years. What we have heard from our CEO survey, we have interviewed more than 4,400 global CEOs. And with the first one that they told us, they increased their interest to invest in China. So China, in the past 5 years, China remained as the top 5 locations that they would like to invest. And this year, we see they have already increased 2%, show the interest to invest more in China. And we see there are a lot of countries that had never shown up before as the top 10, including Indonesia. And we saw a more increase like Swiss, Germany, they all show more increase, more than 4% increase on investing in China. And this is one part. The other part, what our global partners and the global clients told us, they really want to be in China, not to be decoupling with China, but actually to be more integrated in China. Why? Because in China, they can access to the talent pool. In China, every year, we produce 5 million STEM students. These are the talent they are now eager to get. Yeah. And secondly, they can access to the massive industrial and massive and comprehensive industrial and market scenarios they cannot find anywhere else. These can make test their new ideas, new technologies to make it from lab to market here in China and to implement and scale it up. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about the high quality productive forces, actually there are 4 key elements. One is innovation capability, infrastructure capacity, and also the supply chain comprehensiveness, and also talent pools. And we see China is booming in all these 4 key elements. Actually, we see China's enterprises have already shifted from being suppliers in the supply chain, become an anchor firm in the value chain, in the global value chain. And that means we have already changed from being a passive integration to the model to become a proactive construction in the global value chain. And this means that we shift the model, how we cooperate with our international partners. Actually, we can see has been fundamentally shifted from made in China to create in China. For example, in Shanghai, now there are more than 600 multinational companies R&D center set up there. And it means creating in China is not only for China, it's actually creating China for global.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing all these great surveys and insights. Now, Professor Zha, you have an interesting job. You're basically help cultivate the next generation of leaders from the world, now particularly in the global South countries, in the South-South Cooperation Institute of Peking University. How would you tell your students about the stage of the Chinese economy and the transformation the Chinese economy is undergoing right now, and the potential, of course, that it presents for them and for their countries?
Well, there has been a rather, should I say, tectonic change in the nature of economic relationship between China and other low and middle income economies. A textbook view, somewhat historical, somewhat outdated, would look for the degree of vertical integration, meaning you would have China exporting finished products and importing raw materials such as agricultural products, mineral ores. But one thing that has transformed the relationship between trade and investment between China and other low-income economies is intermediaries. You have more and more of these Chinese firms exporting tools, machineries, factories, what they may call these tools and machineries are deployed in what people say global South economies. They use these tools imported from China to produce products, and those intermediates get exported back here into China or into other economies. The overall Chinese strategy, flowing from what Zhou Mi and Zhou Xing has said, is that, yes, the overall economic growth here in China may be slowing down, but in terms of the strategy that's being announced to address it, one of the key words you hear missing in the Chinese pronouncements is reshoring. We don't reshore back to China because of slowing down growth. What instead we do is to global shoring. We continue to promote trade and investment just about anywhere in the world. We should no longer be looking at other low and middle income economies as being on the receiving end. They are slowly but more firmly climbing up the ladder of global production chain, and that's a welcome change. And at the same time, opportunity is for different parties at whatever stage of development to fit in and see how it can adjust and work on the aggregate stability of that global chains of finance, of production, and certainly of, in many ways, of knowledge.
Thanks so much for these great analyses. Now, John, if you think about it, China has delivered on its 5-year plans, right? Every 5 years, it maps out its priorities for its socioeconomic development, and it largely means what it says and delivers on those goals and targets. And this year, for the next 5 years, China has said that they will focus on 109 mega projects in some dozens of areas. What do you think China brings to the world by making these 5-year plans and largely delivering on them?
Well, each of us is one of over 8 billion self-interested entities in over 200 countries. And what China brings is intelligence, stability, and socialism. In America, for example, capitalism controls politics and public policy, and the middle class is disappearing. In China, through a wonderful, wonderful confluence of things, 800 million, 900 million people have been lifted out of poverty within a single lifetime. China has the genius to realize that China can't win unless all its neighbors win. Some other countries feel that they can't win unless everybody else loses. And they don't look after their people. In America, the middle class is disappearing, and it's left a lot of very, very angry people. And that's produced a 47th and a 45th president. So when I look around, I see 22% of the human race with intelligent, benevolent, well-planned leadership. When I look around in the developing world and in the developed world, the developing world is delighted to see one of their own not only succeed, but have the genius to look after everyone else. And the developed world is terrified because they had underestimated everybody else. And the Chinese have produced an extraordinary, the best government in their history, and as I said, to my view, the most effective and responsible and representative government in the world. And that's what China provides that no one else does.
Dr. Zhou Mi, let me ask you about China's trade and the global trading environment that has been disrupted by the war in the Middle East. Despite of that, China's economy has started 2026 on a relatively strong footing. If you look at its January through February trade data, its trade in goods went up 18% year on year. Of course, there are seasonal factors. Some firms might be shipping their goods out before tariffs hit on them. But what does this 18% trade increase in goods says about the structural resilience of China's trade structure and the Chinese firms?
Well, yeah, it is annual basis, increase about the trade. So it's a comparison between this year and the last year. So, January and February of last year is just before the so-called Liberation Day of the United States. So they haven't did that for the reciprocal tariff for China, for the rest of the world. So the comparison, I think, is accumulation effects after several months of accumulation, and the world is trying to trust China better compared with last year. So I think that is the main reason why we see when the world is suffering from so many uncertainties, the global supply chain is under reconstruction, they will pay more attention about China's resilience. I think that is the main reason why we are able to attract so many trading partners to do business with us. Well, the second, I would say that if you're looking at the structure of the China's export and import, it is much more diversified than before. So we are still good at the traditional products, like the labor-intensive products, like some of these, shoes, clothes, furnitures, those things. But we are trying to explore our, arenas to a much wider range, like the new energy vehicles, lithium, solar panels, wind turbines. And I would say that is kind of the reason, because China is able to produce a better and stronger industries. The industries of manufacturing are really able to provide the world with not just the good enough products, but the solutions. So the world is really need that. And the third one, I think that if you're looking at the data, it's not just about the increase of the exports. We are increased more and more import from other countries. So, generally speaking, that import and export are really closely connected with each other. So we are importing more things and we are exporting more things. So the world is under a better, cycle in this way. I think that is the way, because China is always open our market. We keep the tariffs low. We almost giving, the zero tariff import from all African countries. I think that is really what we can do, because we are really one of very firm committers to the WTO, the system, and we obey our rules. We will fulfill our commitments, and that brings the world so many hope.
Yeah, China is providing a lot of goods and services, and not only, but it is also providing public goods and thought leadership. For example, this China Development Forum is one of the major forums in China that convenes thought leaders and global policy leaders. Zhou Xing, you're attending this year's CDF, and this year's theme is advancing high-quality development and creating new opportunities together. What do you think this theme means for China and the world?
Let's see what created new opportunities. Sometimes changes and uncertainty created opportunities. But now we're facing the uncertainties actually driven by AI development, climate change, and geopolitical challenges. These uncertainties are so pervasive. No one enterprises, neither one country can resolve them alone. So I think now is the time to call for the international cooperation to resolve these challenges and create new opportunities. For example, let's talk about AI. So now is the opportunity for everyone, cross the borders, cross the companies, then to find a way to work together to share their data, but not really break the data privacy or data security rules. And then invest together, to find a way to invest together to train the AI for the specific industry. Then after this has been implemented, then we'll see more innovations and more energy will come out from this industry, not only from large companies, but all these small enterprises or even startups. They can all benefit from the well-developed industrial AI and to create a new idea, new technology in that industry. So that's how we see the new opportunities here, is to cross-border, cross-company, even cross-industry to work together and really implement industrial AI together.
I thought that was a brilliant example. The devil is in the details. It really is a brilliant example showcasing the necessity of companies breaking down barriers. Professor Zha, we have an issue, the war in the Middle East. We've seen the war from the decapitation war launched by the United States and Israel, quickly becoming a war of attrition. That there's no end in sight of this war. The stock prices tumbled, energy prices up, A lot of industries have been affected, such as tourism and airlines. How do you see the impact of this war in Iran against Iran, having on the Chinese economy, and how should China really brace for the impact of this war? Should they last longer?
So one of the responses is stockpiling, whether it's commercial or it's government-funded strategic stockpiling. The other is a diversification in arranging your energy mix. And on that score, here in China, we have done fairly well. If you look at public transport, the reliance on fuel and oil for managing the transport, individual cars or long-distance transport, the reliance on oil is only 20%. What can economies like China do to relate, and in terms of building up resilience, not just for ourselves, for them as well, structurally? I would think there are at least two possibilities, and one is already being done. One is to invest in the economic diversification, and many Middle Eastern economies have been trying that, such as the Vision 2030 that's of Saudi Arabia. China should participate in that. And secondly, very importantly, is to invest in the energy diversification of those countries, including solar, including wind, including other renewables.
John, what do you think is China's role, really, when you think about the turbulence that we are in right now, geopolitically, geoeconomically, and the Chinese initiatives on development, on security, on peace, what they can potentially do to the future of the world and to usher in a new world order?
China is a very humble country that is leading, designing the future of mankind, period. And that's its role. And it didn't necessarily push to the front of the line. It has moral authority because of what it's done for its own people. And then reaching out, 2012 AIIB, 2013 Belt and Road, 2014 Common Prosperity. China is the bright student in the world class. And all of us in America and Europe, throughout the world, are benefiting from a country that makes sense and is benevolent, mature, stable. And I don't say this to please anybody. I'm simply telling you how you are viewed by intelligent people around the world.
Thanks so much, Sean, for being a great thinker and being a good friend of China. Now, I want to open up for questions. If you have any questions, please raise your hand and identify yourself. Okay, this young lady, please.
I'm from Beijing Foreign Studies University, and I'd like to ask Mr. Zhou. China's economy started strong this year, and which sector or industry do you think can best reflect this growth? Thank you.
This year, one of these very important keyword is artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence is very popular in the world, and it's have a lot of very detailed applications like the robots, like those kind of new things connecting everything together.
Okay, that young gentleman, please.
I have a question to Professor Zha. From the perspective of the global south, where do you see the most practical opportunities to work with China today?
I would think there can be four possibilities. Now, one is really to look at the Chinese experience from within and from without. In other words, you have that tendency sometimes in another country of saying, oh, China made it. We should make it too, right? If we just copy that Chinese experience. Well, that's not true, because the Chinese experience in whatever industry, at whatever level, didn't go, had the experience several stages. There were different contexts. And second, it's that treat China on more of these as a normal country, in commercial terms, the business norms, or what else. Give no favors, ask no favors. And third is to be a little patient, because here we need to, in China, our entities, corporate executives, and then even our scholars are not very knowledgeable about the quote-unquote global South society. The last one is that, to be frank, when there are differences, when there are moments of unhappiness, so that we all learn from our own behaviors, and so that we attune ourselves on both sides.
All right, with that, we come to the end of this edition of the Special Roundtable. I want to thank all our panelists for their great insights and perspectives. Thank you for tuning in to this China Development Opportunities for the World Roundtable. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing. I'll see you again next time.